Just for starters, what actually is ME?
Well, the short version is most people who have ME had a virus at some point in their lives and they've never fully recovered. The longer version is it's a very debilitating illness, potentially. A lot of different possible symptoms, and some of the experts we speak to talk about the term dysregulation. So dysregulation of multiple systems in the body, where they've been initiated by that trauma of the virus, and the dysregulation has thrived in the body and created issues upon itself. And those sort of symptoms can be cognitive dysfunction, brain fog, struggle to concentrate, physical limitations, hypersensitivity to noise or light, struggle regulating temperature.
So presumably with this sort of wider range of things, it'll affect everybody differently.
Yeah, absolutely. So some people will find different systems of the body are affected more than others. Some people find certain symptoms are more pronounced than others. And there's also a spectrum in which you experience the illness. So you can have a mild experience, a moderate, or a severe experience. The most severe cases of ME are people left bedbound, unable even to digest food, so they're tube fed, unable physically to move, and on a scale of 1 to 100 they're probably less than 10 on that scale. And then the moderate people are probably still unable to work, incapacitated by their illness, and they're probably largely housebound and limited as to how much socialising they can do. But they can mobilise a little bit. They're able to watch a little bit of TV. They're able to maybe do a little bit of stuff around the house. And then there are mild cases as well where people are able to engage in normal life, but they have restrictions as to how much they can do in work or in their outside life. And you can move between those different categories of the illness.
So for you, how did it develop?
Well, I had glandular fever in 2012, and I had a really rough 12 months. With hindsight, I should have been diagnosed with ME in that 12-month period. And I recovered to the stage I had about 5 or 6 years where I was relatively healthy, but with some lingering problems just beneath the surface. So having not been diagnosed, I didn't know how to protect myself from the potential of a setback. And in 2018, I had a devastating, life-changing relapse of the illness because I hadn't been diagnosed. I didn't know what I was doing, and that's left me with a disability, almost certainly a lifelong disability, and I spent 2.5 years unable to leave the flat pretty much.
And so from that though, how you obviously you think things have improved to a degree for yourself. How have you got to the stage you're at now? What sort of, I suppose so maybe therapy is not quite the right word, but I suppose it is physical therapy as much as anything else, isn't it?
Yeah, so occupational therapy is the medical field which is most useful for the rehabilitation of people who live with ME. I resorted to Googling for support in the UK, and I found a private clinic at the beginning of 2019. So I got some really good advice and hands-on support there, which was really helpful. But I was quite a severe case at that stage, and it can be very difficult to get further up the rungs of the ladder when you're a severe case. So it was very, very difficult at the start to see improvements, and then sort of gradually over a long period of time got into a sort of more moderate phase of the illness, and my recovery is progressing more now.
If we just sort of take a quick turn into the past sort of two bit years with the pandemic though. So how did you feel at the start of it all? Because you were obviously dealing with your own health issues, and then this comes in. How were you during that initial period?
Well, I think there was two things going on in my head. Firstly, what's the implications for me if I get if I pick up COVID, because I'm already extremely ill. I mean, another serious virus in my system could well compound my issues, and will I ever recover if my illness worsened as a result of COVID? So there was a lot of fear of mixing, and I wasn't really able to leave the flat, but I was being even more cautious than normal. And I think as a community, those living with ME are a little bit frustrated that hasn't been recognised more. The risk of exacerbation. And then the second thought was definitely there are going to be more ME cases. This is a serious virus. ME arises from viral infections. We didn't know what it was called, but people with ME were predicting long COVID.
Well, that's it, because you have got a thing now where long COVID is recognised. I remember even early on in the pandemic, people were talking about it, and it was sort of thing of, it was almost seen as like this potential issue known as long COVID, and then bit by bit, government started to go, yeah, this is going to be a thing. And in one sense, let's say ME sufferers like yourself saw this coming, and said this will be, there will be people who live with this long term. Do you think the government response to it initially was perhaps a bit blinded by what was going on around them, but wasn't necessarily focused enough on the longer term yet?
Well, I think there's two elements to this one too. I think the Isle of Man had a great opportunity to prepare before the pandemic. So, I mean, there's a campaign been running for decades for improved healthcare for people with ME, and the Isle of Man came quite close on a number of occasions with different health ministers who make promises of creating an ME service. If those promises had been fulfilled before the pandemic, then that would have been useful. That would definitely have been helpful for people experiencing long COVID. It wouldn't have, sorted all of the issues. There are some differences with long COVID, but that would have been helpful, and there's a huge missed opportunity. Then the second element is, once the pandemic was here, what was the response like? And I think it could have been better. I think there was a lot of conflicting priorities and a lot of things that needed dealing with at the start of the pandemic, but this was a foreseeable problem very early on, and not necessarily the most burdensome problem either to deal with. So I think a little bit of resource earlier on would have made a big difference.
But do you think that in one sense, the pandemic and with long COVID, it has sort of almost helped push your cause further? Because it has sort of made me realise, it isn't the fewer numbers that we thought it was. This is going to affect a lot more people. It's going to affect a lot more of the workforce. And suddenly people have gone, yeah, we need to look at this a bit more. And that sort of is what led to some of the advancements that we've had, or potential advancements in the past sort of 18 months. Yeah,
definitely. I think the ME community worldwide has seen that this is a change in the dynamic and a change in the conversation. More people understand, even if they've only got a slight taste of what post-viral illness is like. They've got a better appreciation of it, and I'm optimistic that this is going to be the start of positive developments, not just in the Isle of Man but further afield. And
we've done various pieces on Jeff by yourselves, but what has ME Support been doing on the island, both sort of publicly but also stuff behind the scenes and dealing with ministers and things? What have you been doing to raise the profile of what you're trying to push for?
Well, as you point out, we have been badgering ministers and MHKs, but the great stuff I feel like we've achieved is with your help and other media outlets, we've got the word out and got some of the the key messages about recovering from viruses, and then one of the things I think I'm most proud of is the workshops that we've created. We've created pre-recorded video segments which explain the illness and the dynamics of it. We've got interviews with UK experts, and we've tried to explain to an audience in a room, if we can, what are the practicalities of these illnesses and how do you manage them in the different settings, whether that be in work, in a sporting setting, in a social setting, in a family setting, we've got enough material to hand to create more training sessions, and we very much like to hear from other organisations if they'd like to learn more.
And a big sort of public figure in a lot of this has been Phil Gordon, who's ex-minister himself in DOI and various other in government. How big has his support been in terms of pushing, but also knowing who to speak to, where to speak, and putting across the message? Because his daughter, I believe, is
Kitty. Yeah. Well, I think I'm a huge amount of. We owe a debt of gratitude to Kitty and Phil, because they shared their story to Tynwald members last May, and it's a brave thing to do, but it made a big difference. And Phil's connections have definitely helped us, and he's very astute in the political dealings we've had to navigate. So as a charity and a community, we're certainly grateful to have the Gordons involved.
We don't normally give plugs to outside media, but you are going to be on his Manx Radio show the weekend?
That's right, yeah. Sunday the 8th, Manx Radio's Perspective show is going to focus on ME. It's going to be a special on World ME Day.
And let's just turn back to the healthcare provision now. So when did you personally start getting involved in the push for more improved healthcare?
So I got involved a little bit in 2019 and 2020, but I was particularly ill then, so it was very little I could contribute. And then as my health started to improve a little bit in 2021, and we were still in the middle of the pandemic, I was sort of motivated to get more actively involved. And then over the course of the last 12 months or so, we've gone from campaigning very actively politically, as we were sort of on the outside of things, to getting a way in with Manx Care and the DHSC, and we're very grateful, because over the course of the last 12 months we've built up a relationship with sort of Manx Care's sort of key staff in this area and DHSC, and we've been trying to collaborate to come up with a constructive answer for helping people.
So what is it that you are wanting to see delivered? Because obviously DHSC sets the policy, Manx Care deliver. What is it that you want to see effectively brought together?
Well, we're working on the finer detail, and there are a lot of moving parts and a lot of components to it. But the three key areas for patients, I think, are diagnosis needs to be accurate, needs to be timely. So you need to provide training to GPs to help them, but I think more importantly, you need to give the GPs the referral options, so that when they acknowledge the issues, they can pass it on to the specialist team. It needs early intervention, so when people are in the first few weeks and months of recovery from a virus, you need to guide them through that process. I probably wouldn't have developed ME, almost certainly wouldn't have developed ME with that correct advice at the start of the process in 2012. And then thirdly, we need a tailored approach for each individual. So because ME is different for each person, the way in which they're supported by the healthcare system needs to be tailored. And
so what progress have you made with Manx Care? Because obviously they've committed to various different things. They had the listening days, they hosted everything else with yourselves. So where are we up to with that? What's the latest that you can tell us?
Yeah, I'd say we're a little bit disappointed we're not further on at this stage, particularly given the incentive of long COVID and the pandemic. But in the last 5 or 6 weeks, we have made good progress. We've seen them make good progress. They've appointed a service development lead, so that's an individual who's dedicated to overseeing the development of the service and helping the local clinicians. And she's got lots of experience in running transformation programs in the UK with bigger NHS trusts. So we're greatly encouraged by that appointment. And they're going through the processes of recruitment, working out who's going to fill each role, and developing the pathway, and there's quite a lot of thought that needs to go into that to get it right, to make it tailored to each individual. And we're hoping that over the next few months, the design and planning will then lead to changes that patients notice, certainly well before the end of the calendar year. I
just sort of finally to end on, there'll be a lot of people who say, we've seen it, people say about the rush to get back to work after you've been ill, and you would have thought that would have changed a little bit, given what we've all lived through in the past couple of years, but it doesn't seem to have done. So what advice would you have for people who do have any sort of viral illness, and not just necessarily about in terms of their recovery, but also what to look out for in terms of whether it is developing into something else?
Yeah, well, I think if I was able to go back and speak to myself in 2012, then
you tell yourself to put all your money on Leicester to win the Premier League. Everyone has the same answer.
That is true, yes. But I would scare me. I would, introduce some fear, because, I was naive, I was complacent. I thought, it'll be all right, I'll get better. If I go back to work, or if I do this or do that, then it's not going to make a material difference to my recovery. And I didn't realise that there was a real fork in the road with these illnesses, and you can get better, but also if you make mistakes, it can go really severely wrong. And if you don't catch it in those early stages, then there's no turning back. The other difficulty with this is that I think people are generally conscientious, in their jobs. People want to keep up appearances. They want to do a good job. They may be ambitious in their career and trying to make their mark. Or it could just be that the financial pressures of wanting to get back to work. And it's not an easy thing to work out whether you need to take a step back and do reduced hours for a short period of time, or do a more gradual phased return to work after a virus. But if you've got a sympathetic and understanding employer, then hopefully there's an arrangement that can be found that is in everybody's long-term interest, because ultimately the employer wants you available to do the work in 12 months' time, and if they flog you to the stage that you've got severe ME, you will not be working for them, and that valuable resource will be gone.
Well, June, thanks for your time, and so we hope things continue to get better. I'm sure if they don't, then we'll be hearing from you again.
Yes, indeed. I think while the illness lingers, you'll be still hearing plenty from me.
Cheers.